Hey everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY cloud learning to inspire. For today, our web series is to implement site-to-site VPN tunnel between Microsoft Azure and AWS Cloud. Now, before we dive into deploying the solution, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share with friends. I would really appreciate it. Now, without further delay, let's go to our notes. Before we get into the notes, let's quickly discuss this diagram between the two clouds. On the left, we have a VNet and then a subnet of that VNet. And then we will deploy a VNet gateway, a network gateway, and then we'll have some routes. Also, pairing will be done. There is a VM that I will deploy to test out connectivity from here all the way to EC2. Also, on this side, we have AWS, which is on VPC 168.16, and then we'll have some subnets. Also, we will deploy a customer gateway. This is the place where we will actually put IP for this gateway. And then also VPN connection, these IP will go here. And then also we will have a EC2 machine to test out the connection. What the plan is to basically start both of them. Actually, what we'll do is we'll log into VM first on the Azure side, and then we will connect from Azure to this EC2 private machine to test out the connectivity. So without further delay, let's go into my notes and check it out. In my notes, we will have this is also going to be available on GitHub, so you can check it out. This whole exercise will have three parts. First part will work quickly on the Azure side. We'll then move into AWS, do some settings over there, get the shared key ID, will come here on the Azure side, we'll enter those in here, and then after that, in the end, once we verify the connectivity is there, we'll create some VM, and then we'll try to show you how the test out the connection is. All right, so any question, feel free to reach out. You will have I have my WhatsApp here. Just scan it and send me a text or leave a comment, or you have ways to reach out. So all right, so as you can see on the desktop, I'm already logged into my Azure portal, as well as I have my AWS portal. I'm both logged in with my ID. First, per our notes, first we will start deploying some of the devices in Azure. Then we'll move into AWS, and then we'll go back to Azure and insert the shared ID key. So let's start. As always, in order for you to create resources, you need to have a resource group. We will quickly create a resource group. Just pick any subscription. I would just say site to site. You can do Azure to AWS. And then which region? I would say West US. Next, and create. So first thing what we did was we created a resource. The next thing what we do is we will create a virtual network, and that virtual network will be in this resource for connectivity. So the next step, we will select the resource group name, and then we will give a name to the virtual network. It's your call. You can give whatever you like. I would just give let's say site to site VNet to AWS. It's much easier to understand that way. And obviously we have West US, which is where our resource group is. Subnet, I think we're gonna just delete this one and we will add our own. So I think over here we'll just do 172.16.0.0/16, and then we will add a subnet, and then for that we will just do, I think we'll just give a random name for VPN. So I'll do site to site VPN SNet, and then for same thing we'll do 172.16.1.0/24, and we will click OK, and then we'll review and we will create. Once this is done, our next step is to create a virtual network gateway. Um, Before we do that, we want to make sure that we have a gateway, a subnet assigned to that gateway. Usually it's just like bash and hose, or um, I think firewall. You need to have a separate gateway for all these devices. So for now, what we'll do is we'll just go to virtual network, uh, and then we'll go here on the subnet. And if you look up here, it says gateway subnet, just like we did in firewall. Firewall had its own subnet as well as bash and hose. You just need to make sure you have a name. It's, if you see it, this is grayed out. So over here, you can just leave it the way it is, or you can just do one. So actually, let's do two here because we already have a one. All right, and then we will hit create. So we created a subnet. All right, so once again, we created a resource group, and we created a virtual network, and we gave 172.16.0.016, and then the subnet, we created one subnet for VPN and one subnet for gateway of its own. And then once that is done, we will go back here, and the next step is to create a virtual network gateway. Over here, we will create a virtual network gateway. And then once that is done, you will actually give name. So I would say side to side virtual network gateway. I would say Azure to AWS. I'm just giving this naming convention so that it's easier for people to understand where the traffic is moving. West US, gateway type, will do VPN. We're not doing express route. Route base, SKU is stock unit. We'll just leave it for VPN gateway 1. You can do 2 as well. I'm just picking it up like that. Virtual network, we'll just select the network that from the top down that we created, and then it already picked up, as you can see, it already picked up a gateway subnet from the list. Public IP, I would say virtual network gateway PIP. Just give a random name or whatever you like, easier for you, and click next, next, and create. Once we hit create, it will start creating. It would take good 10-15 minutes. So we will, for now, we will go into AWS and do some other work. In the meantime, I would also explain this. Once this IP is created, I will use this IP as a customer IP on the AWS side. So you will see, but let's continue here. So I hit create here. And then once I hit create, it will take good 15 minutes, I would say. So in the meantime, the deployment is taking place. I would go to my AWS console, and I would already logged in. I will go into my VPC. Once I get to VPC, I will create a virtual private, create VPC. I would just give them a name of, I would say, side to side VPC AWS to Azure, just to give a name. And then for here, we can just take a 192 block, I would say. So let's do 192.168.0.0/16. And then we will just default tenancy, we'll hit create. Okay, so our VPC is created. Now we will create a subnet. Hit create. We'll assign the VPC, and then we will give a name. I would say side to side SNet AWS to Azure. And for CIDR block, I would say 192.168.1.0/24. I think that will work out better. So you can see that we have a CIDR block 192.168.16, and then our IP here. All right, so we'll hit create. then we have a subnet created. Once that is done, we can edit route for now, but right now we don't need to. But I would suggest just associate the subnet. So come here into route table. As always, a route is created which is attached to your VPC that you created. Hopefully you know what this is. I have done it. I have actually showed that in previous labs as well, and projects. So I would come here, I would select this, and I would associate. For now, we associated this VPC to have this subnet, and then also route, I haven't defined route yet. I will do that in a second. Over here, I will edit a route of basically for Azure. So technically, once we are done setting up stuff, we will come here and we'll use this subnet and allow the traffic in here back and forth. So in a bit. So let's go ahead and click on to come down here all the way, and this is the area that we'll be working on mostly. So let's click on to customer gateway. Over here we will create a customer gateway. So customer gateway is basically Azure. Azure is a customer, which is where we are going to be adding the IP. Now, this is IP is the IP that I was talking about once this is created. So once this gateway is created, this will be a customer IP over here that we need to enter on the gateway. So this gateway IP will be defined in this gateway so that they both know that, hey, you know what, this is the gateway that you need to connect. So I am going to put a pause. Once this is set up, as I mentioned, it takes good 15 minutes. Then we'll continue from there. Be right back. All right, guys, so the virtual network gateway is deployed. We're going to do a quick resource. Let's check out the time first. So operation detail. So it took good 17 minutes to deploy a virtual network gateway. So when you are trying to deploy the solution, make sure you understand that it takes this long to deploy a virtual network gateway. Again, we will come here actually before we do that as well. So let me show you the diagram what we have done so far. So we have created a VNet, and we have created a gateway net subnet as well as a virtual machine VPN subnet. And then we also just now assigned a VNet gateway, and that IP would be customer IP. And this, we will take it all the way to customer gateway. So we will enter here and then we'll go further. So let's, and I also made sure that the IP reflects whatever we are using. Okay, let's go here. This is the IP that we need. We'll copy and we will come here. Over here we'll just assign, we'll give this IP as a customer IP, REST certificate ARN and device. We don't need that. Click create, close, and this is happening. The next step is to create a virtual private gateway. So as per diagram, we will be creating a gateway here. Create, we'll give it a name. I would say VPGW AWS. Make sure we have a default. Create, and then once we create the gateway, we will attach this gateway. This gateway is just sitting there. We won't do anything unless we assign to a VPC, which is a network. So we'll create here and we'll right click here. You can go here as well and attach. And we want to make sure we drop down and select our VPC that we created and click yes. The next step is create a site-to-site VPN connection. Over here, we would just go ahead and hit create VPN connection. I would say VPN dash AWS to Azure, and virtual private gateway. We are not doing transit gateway. Over here, virtual private will define our VPN gateway, which is the one that we just created earlier. And then customer side Azure gateway, and then we want to make sure that this is the CIDR block for Azure. Routing option, we can select, I would say let's make sure that we have a route for 16, so we over here, since we're in AWS, we want to make sure we give that Azure 1172.16.0.0/16. If you look here, it says enter one or more IP prefix inside a notion separate by commas to advertise to your VPC. Okay, and then over here, tunnel, make sure this is IP version v6. What is the local IPv4 network CIDR? You can use your CIDR block for like the subnet mask. I'm just gonna leave it to 0.0. Any traffic that is coming here, and then also for the remote, I would do the same thing for any dot. And rest I will. So again, just making sure you understand name of the VPN connection, VPN gateway for AWS, customer gateway, which is Azure, static IP, which is the customer IP. I would say this is the default like CIDR, and then we want to make sure that any traffic back and forth is okay to go in. You can change it to different subnet here. Create, and we would close. Okay, so this has started to create. What we will do is we will come up here and we will click on download configuration, so that this is the config where you're gonna take and we'll get some ID, like this will create a shared ID key as well as also an IP that I need to define it onto the Azure network. So you will see in a second here. Let me download this. Download, open, and it opened up on my other screen. I will close this. So this is basically the whole VPN connection configuration. You have VPN connection ID, gateway ID, customer gateway ID. This is all we have defined. This is the IPsec1, tunnel 1, and then there is a tunnel 2 as well. And then also, if you scroll further down, first I want you to see there that this is IPsec1. There is a shared key. This is what we need. Also, an IP, which is virtual private gateway IP. This is the customer IP that we already defined. This is the IP that I was given by AWS, so this is what I'm going to define onto our Azure. So what we'll do is first copy, and we go back to our Azure. Over here, we will create a local network gateway. So we click on local network gateway. We will create a connection. We'll just give them a name. I say local network gateway. And IP address, this is the IP address that we need, that, hey, you know what, is defining that this is the gateway. Range, I would define the AWS 192.168.0.0/16. This is the AWS. And then I want to make sure that I define the resource group, and I would hit create. We won't touch the BGP right now. And this is created. Deployment in progress. So now we created a local gateway, a network gateway. So if I go up on my picture here, so now we set up all these things: gateway, the VPN connection gateway, customer gateway, which is the IP that I add here. And then also we created a VPN connection where we define that, hey, you know, just the gateway for connecting to AWS is this. And then from here, I also define a VPN gateway here. And then in there we said any IP which is 0.0 between the two can go and talk to each other. So which is going to help us with the VM that we have. Okay, so let's go back here. I would refresh. And then we have a local network connectivity. Over here, we will just have to click on connection. So we want to make sure we add a connection between the two. Add. Over here, we'd say Azure Con gateway. We would define the gateway, that is the virtual network gateway for Azure to AWS, and local area network, local network gateway is already defined. Shared key, we would come here from this configuration sheet, and we will select the entire shared key. I think there's a dot in there. This is confusing, but let's make sure that we have the entire thing. Copy, paste, and rest is all there. IPv2, click OK, and then we will wait, because this is gonna take another 5-10 minutes to ensure that it is connected. It's updating, it's gonna show unknown, and then eventually it will connect. So it's just trying to establish a connection between the AWS. I am going to pause the video and then come back once this is established. Also, while this is happening, I want to show you something else as well. Actually, let's make sure that we have route defined as well. Let's go up here, route table, go back again. Over here, we want to make sure we define a route. So this is the route where the traffic would go. The connectivity will happen in the back, it's happening, but I also want to make sure the machines are connected. So I want to make sure that I define the IP for our Azure CIDR. So it was 172.16, and then we'll just select 16, and which is basically defining, hey, what is going on. It will come from virtual private gateway, and I would do save, and that's it. And then same thing, what we'll do is we'll actually go to our Azure, click on to route table, create a route table, so that we can define that, when we will create a machine, we want to define the route, what it's going to take to go out. So resource group, again, this one, West US, I would say RT to AWS, next, and I would hit create. So once this is deployed, we will make sure that we have assigned the subnet. So as of right now, if I look at overview of the route, let me refresh it. Oops, we don't want to do that. Refresh. All right, we have route. We get here. In our overview, you can see we don't have any route and we don't have any subnet. First thing, what we do is we would associate a subnet. For that, we need to click onto subnet, and then we will associate the subnet. Over here, we want to make sure that we pick our VNet subnet, and then also we want to make sure we click our VPN subnet. Gateway we don't need to, because this is where everything needs to go through from. Click OK, and then go into route. We will have a route. Over here, we can say RT Azure -2 AWS prefix. I would give the prefix of whatever the CIDR block is for our AWS 172.16.0.0/16, and I would click OK. Okay. I think our subnet for VNet for AWS is 192.168, I believe. Sometimes you just have to make sure you write it down. 192.168. So I would give, sorry, my bad, I should give 192.168.0.0/16, and then we would leave it as virtual network gateway. So any route that it goes through, hit the virtual network gateway first, and we would hit click OK. All right, so the route is done. In the meantime, we will quickly go up here onto our site-to-site VPN connection I want to make sure we go, this is available, so which is a good sign. We'll go here and hit set. So tunnel detail, this is down, so this will, like, it takes time. So I would just keep monitoring this. Here, over here, we would go to connection, and so we will go up back to our LAN. So we'll click on LAN, and then this is the connection we created. We want to make sure that it is connected. It seems like we would go up here to connection, and it says it is connected. So that means that there is a connectivity between Azure to AWS. Now we will go back to our AWS, and that is also up. So basic, the prime lab between the connectivity between the two cloud, which is Azure versus AWS, the connection is established. Now the next thing is we will start deploying 2 machines, and what we'll do is we'll have 1 machine in AWS, which we'll keep it as private, and then 1 machine in Azure. We'll keep it as public, so we will try to jump box that Azure machine into our AWS private network. So let's do that. Feel free to reach out if you have any question. Just create a basics machine. Just 16 base. Next. I would just pick up my subnet. We want to keep the IP subnet public IP disabled because we don't need public IP. Click next, next, next. You can do tags as well. For security group, you can say RDP to RDP from, you don't need that, but for now, because you're not connecting to AWS, to Azure, sorry. RDP, any traffic right now because we are inside the network, so there is no security issues right now. Click next, and then launch. I want to make sure I have the key pair, or maybe I can just create one. I do have one, so I'll just use the one that I have and click launch, and this is gonna take time. While we go into our Azure, we will deploy a VM up here. Add VM. Our network, where we're going to define, I would say VM to AWS. Side to side VM to AWS, which make more sense. Windows 10 or Windows Server, whatever it works for you. You want to make sure that size of that machine. Make sure we give the name, allow RDP because that's what we want. Disk. Since this is lab, just make sure you have premium. Change to a standard. Networking, we'll just keep it basic. Next. Diagnostic if you want to have that. For now we don't. Click next. Click next, and review and create. All right, so both machines are like deploying. So in the meantime, I want to make sure this is also still initializing. I'm going to take the password from this machine, and I will go into our Azure machine, and I'll try to run it from there. So I'm going to put a quick pause while these machines are deploying, and I'll come right back up. All right, so our machine is done on the AWS side. So we're just going to get a password here. password, copy. I'm going to use my Mobox, so just give me a second here. We'll establish a connection. Actually, first we need to go into our VM here. Yeah, the resources created. Don't get confused. So let me give you an example here. So we have created an EC2 machine, we have created a VM, we have the connectivity. As you saw, the tunnel is up. So what we'll do is we will remote into this VM here, and then this will be served as a jump box to connect to our EC2 machine here. Okay, and I'm using this IP to log in first, and then once I log in, I will connect to this EC2 machine from there. This is a tool that I use to basically connect. All I need is to grab an IP address for our VM. So I'll just copy this on here. RDP, and user would be test admin, and click OK, and it's asking for password, and it is now connecting to the VM on the Azure side. So this is Azure. Now the goal is to connect to our VM on the AWS side. So we're going to come here. We will copy the password. 1.59 is the address. So I will remember that in a second here. So let it load. Yes. I am disabling the firewall. I don't think it makes any difference, but it's okay. And now we will just connect to our desktop. I will just make sure I have the IP 192.168. And hit connect. So we are connecting to our VM on AWS. Make sure I have the password. Paste the password. R, and click OK. You don't have to disable the IP, the firewall. All right. So now you can see what's going on here. So we are, first let me explain this a little bit on the diagram first. So we are remoted into Azure, and we have a public IP on this. We are using this to connect our EC2 machine through the site-to-site VPN connection. We're taking as a jump box. We're going to connect to this EC2, which we did. So this is our Azure machine, and we are connected into our AWS machine from there. We can call it a bastion host as well, but that is what the goal was, to connect VM on the Azure to AWS, and we can do back and forth. All right, so I think this is a great lab, perfect example to how to do site-to-site VM. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out. You already know how to get a hold of me. Once again, I thank you for watching the videos. I really appreciate you all subscribing and liking it. It really motivates me, so thank you again. And until next time, have a great day.